Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Thank you guys so much for checking out this video, and thank you for all of your ongoing support. We are busting past 3,000 subscribers, which is a huge benchmark for me personally. I really didn't think we would make it before the end of the year, let alone before we hit October. But in this week's video, we are talking about this guy. This is the Wilcox Raid XE aiming laser. And for a lot of you guys, this is something that you've seen before. You haven't really gotten a lot of info on, haven't been able to play with one. Certainly was something that I have wanted to get my hands on for a while, and finally I have. So we're going to talk about my likes, my dislikes. In full disclosure, I have owned this thing for 5 days-ish at the time of this filming. And for most of that, I was actually, out and about at a wedding and stuff like that. I have not gotten any actual real usage out of it. So I'm gonna give you guys my first thoughts here, and we'll probably follow this up a while down the line with, hey, 6 months looking back, what do I think? All that good stuff. But aiming lasers, if you're into night vision, and I am, are pretty essential. So we're gonna talk about lasers, and we're gonna talk specifically about the Wilcox Raid XE here. Before we get into the Raid, I do want to say thank you to our friends over at Custom Night Vision, you guys. Their website is customnightvision.com. They're a huge supporter of the podcast and the channel, and they were nice enough to send this particular unit out to me for my uses, my purposes. This is mine now, so really, really awesome stuff. If you guys are interested in getting night vision, head on over to their website. They got all kinds of stuff going on over there. They got helmets, they have binos, they have single tube housings, they have intensifier tubes, all kinds of great stuff. CustomNightVision.com. Huge thank you to them for their support, and especially for sending out the laser in today's video. So now let's get ready and let's dive in. Okay, so before we get into the Raid specifically, let's take just a moment here and let's talk about lasers in general. So if you're somebody who's running night vision, something like these MH1s from Light Innovations is what I run. Have some L3 tubes in here, and night vision, it's great. Passively aiming, or otherwise just looking through your red dot optic, through the tube and then through the optic, can be beneficial in some instances. It can also be really challenging and detrimental in a lot of ways. If we're talking about near peer forces, yes, it's important, but more often than not, anybody who's used night vision, who's shot with night vision, who's used it extensively, you want the laser. If at any time you can use it, you want to have that as an option. If it's restricted in the environment, things like that, like we said, near peer, then maybe that's a whole different discussion. But looking through these devices, having an aiming laser, and especially an illuminator of sorts, which is just a flashlight that operates in the IR spectrum, for those of you that might be a little bit uninitiated, right? Used in conjunction with these devices, whether it's a single tube PVS-14 or a set of binoculars like this, it's really, really helpful to have, because it can be pretty difficult without an aiming laser and without an illuminator to function under nods. So why we're talking about this and giving you the context and background is, for a long time, we were pretty restricted as civilians on what lasers we had access to. And when we can sit here, we can talk about stuff that fell off the back of a truck, right? And we can talk about some of those secondhand full power devices like the PEC 15, the D-Ball A2 are really popular ones, or a PEC 2. Yes, those things exist, but off the shelf, direct to consumer options, for a lot of years there, we were basically limited to the Pile C, which is a pile of garbage, which is the PEC 15, but it's a civilian version. So the illuminator isn't adjustable and the laser is not as strong. And we're going to talk about illuminators in a second, but then also the D-Ball A3 and D2. The A3 is basically what you would want in a civilian laser, except for a crappy illuminator. And the D2 is just a very, very chunky laser unit with an LED version of an IR illuminator on it. So it's very heavy, it's obstructive, it's obtrusive, it works better, but it does have some detractors. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, it's the Food and Drug Administration, they are the governing body, yes, love government, are the ones that step in and say, hey, as civilians, you don't have access to lasers with some particular power output range. We're not going to bore you guys with the numbers because it really doesn't make a difference. What you need to know is that there's a certain power output range that they can have and we cannot. And the problem with this was not necessarily that the lasers needed to be stronger, because in truth, most of you guys, I think, that have used most lasers out there would agree that the civilian power laser is fine. It's functional. It works pretty well for our needs and our use cases. But the problem for years has been the illuminator, because all the illuminator was that same laser, but diffused and spread out. And when you diffuse something, you make it weaker. So an already neutered power output turns into a really crummy illuminator. And that's why, you know, a lot of these laser units, like the Hollow Sun, the first generation Hollow Sun, the At-Pile, and the D-Ball line are okay and accessible, but they're really not what we've been looking for. And the nice thing is, in the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of developments. We've seen a lot of enhancements coming from companies like, yes, Hollow Sun, but also then with B.E. Myers and Wilcox, and allegedly at some point, we're going to get a civilian OGL from EOTech. But there's been options. And the way these companies are able to explore different technology using V-cell particular, which is, I think it's vertical cavity, something emitting space emitting laser, something like that. It's a different technology, so it's not neutered by the FDA. It allows us to have reasonable and well-performing IR illuminators. So why I mention all this is because for a while there, we had full power lasers here on one side of things, and we had the civilian power lasers on the other side of things, and a whole bunch of space in between, which is, hey, there's a lot to be desired living right here in the middle. And now, over the last couple of years, we've had products come to market like the Mall, the civilian version of the Mall, which is, yes, quite expensive. But the Raid XC is what we're going to be talking about today. And yes, while the Raid is also, to some of you, prohibitively expensive, I think it is still cheaper than some other options on the market and offers a number of features here that are going to make it a very attractive option. Essentially, to me anyways, this functions or seems to function with a lot of similar controls to that of the PEC 15. So if you notice the dial on top here, that's very PEC 15-esque. While some people may say it's outdated, it works. And if people already know it from using those legacy systems, either as a well-trained civilian or as somebody in the armed services, I think that's a good idea to carry that over, and people are going to enjoy it. But that gray area has basically shrunken down and disappeared, and we have options like the Raid XE here. So my initial thoughts and impressions, one of the things immediately that jumped out that I really liked is you have a single windage and elevation adjustment on the top and on the sides, because it's on the same co-aligned optical bench. What that means in layman's terms is you can zero your vis laser and you can zero your IR laser, and you don't have to do them separately. That's kind of a big deal because there are some legacy units out there that don't allow that convenience factor, and it can be kind of a pain in the butt if you have to zero two separate lasers if you're going to use your vis and then your IR. If you're only using IR or your device only has IR, then it's not as big a deal. But one set of adjustments there, really, really nice, very convenient. It does have a nice tactile fire button over the top here, and it takes a familiar battery type, which is the CR123. And I mean, initially when I installed this, I will say the battery cap, it's a little bit weird. It kind of works like a pill bottle where you kind of got to like push down and then twist it, right? So that your kids can't eat your snacks. And once I figured that out, it's easy, but I do believe that makes this unit waterproof. I think that maritime operations were something that were in mind when they put this little doohickey together. So once I figured that out, not a big deal. It does have a lot of stuff built in above and beyond everything else that's out there in the market, some of which we may not even use as civilians. You can see here next to the windage adjustment here, sorry, the elevation adjustment is an actual sensor that will help you, maybe help in quotations here, adjust the brightness by reading the amount of ambient light in your environment. The nicer part beyond that, which things like the auto-adjusting RMR don't have, is you can actually go into the programming menu utilizing these three buttons here, and you can turn that shit off, because that drives me crazy personally. It also has an adjustable illuminator. So if we see this wheel right here on the back, that actually can adjust the spill or spread or whatever term you want to use of the illuminator. So as you're mounting up on the gun, your thumb is actually in a pretty convenient place to roll that back and forth depending on what you want. And it's not in such a position or an orientation that it's going to cause problems where you're negligently going to hit that and move it, which makes this really, really convenient and nice. Further, it gives you multiple options for your control pads. I know some of you guys really like pressure pads, but one of the things back here on the bottom is this little block off plate. I installed the block off, meaning that there's no port here. The one that I got from Custom did come with a crane plug because that's what I requested. At the time, I was running a Surefire dual pressure pad and have been, and that's what I wanted. Now you can also get it with the Wilcox pressure pad that has like 3 buttons. It's really long and tall and really hard to manage on a gun that's, you know, this short. Yeah, it's great to have 3 buttons that you can program for different brightness levels and different settings and things, but it's really, really real estate prohibitive. So for me, that didn't sound like a good idea. And then further, I ended up moving to this new control configuration where my hand can come over the top of the gun and my thumb can rest in between the control switch and the fire button, and I can bring it back to activate my white light, and I can push it forward and to the right to hit the fire button and not have to worry about anything. So I just use the block off plate, which comes included. That's kind of nice for something this expensive. They didn't hit you up for another $35 for a piece of molded plastic with an O-ring on it, like some companies out there will. It's really well thought out. It's a very robust unit. You can see that it has this hard plastic safety cover on the front. Originally, it came with a bikini cover, similar to the rubberized covers and things that we see on other units like the D-Ball, the PEC 15, the Hollow Sun units, right? And actually to remove and change out this front piece, there's 2 screws in the bottom of the unit here. You actually have to remove those all the way, pull the whole face of this unit off, insert this new face with the flip-on visor already attached and everything, and reinsert those screws on the bottom. So over-engineered, possibly, but if any of us have been using laser units for any amount of time, you know that those little bikini cover type lens cap things that come with your other lasers are the first thing to get broken, to fall off, to need to be replaced if they serve as a diffuser. They're a super pain in the butt, and some of the best lasers on the market, like the PECs, like the NGAL, they use that design, and it's like, hasn't anybody figured out anything better? Yes, I think. We'll see. But it's nice that that's an option there. Now, in terms of what I didn't like about this, there's not a ton, but I will say, if you look at where the mounting orientation is here, this is as far forward as this can go on a rail, because the screws are oriented not in the middle or towards the rear of the laser, but they're basically, let's see if you can see it, they're basically all the way up towards the front here, meaning that this is as far forward as it can go. You can't cheat it forward a little bit so that on shorter guns, you get yourself a little bit more real estate. Maybe that was done by design. I'm not really sure. You have to work around the internals of the unit a little bit. And judging on where the crane port is back here, I'm thinking that maybe that's why. Is it the end of the world? No, it really isn't. In fact, it's almost a non-issue if you have your gun set up similar to what I have here. If you like running big, long dual pressure pads, it might be a problem. Don't know how to help you with that one. I'm not gonna suggest you go get a GBRS Hydra, but maybe that's your option. I don't know, or one of those surfboard mounts, for your Unity riser or something like that. I don't know. It's not a problem for me, so I haven't really thought of a whole bunch of ways to work around it. In terms of the height and the size and the weight, it's really nice. It's not as wide as a pack of cards. It's barely taller than a pack of playing cards, actually. And it fits on the rail fantastic. I think if you're running, just looking at this, if you're running a lower third height optic, you might get some window obscuration. I run a 226 riser from Unity on this, so I clear that without any problems whatsoever. Very, very light unit. Comes with a bunch of different settings. There is a little block out screw here that I need to take out for full power, and you can go ahead and actually stow that right in the center of this adjustment wheel back here so you don't lose it. If you're in an agency or a team or something where you have restrictions on high power outputs, for whatever reason, I'm not, so I don't even know why that would be a problem, especially if most law enforcement teams and agencies have access to higher output powers in the first place. I don't know why you would need that blockout screw. Maybe there's like a state or local law you have to abide by. I think that's silly, but maybe you do. But you can take that out, you can store it back here, and you have access to a whole bunch of different settings. So aiming low, illuminator low, dual low, meaning both aiming laser and illuminator low. And then you can get into your aiming high, illuminator high, and dual high. And then you have your Viz power that's low and high as well. So runs the entire gamut with this, and can't say enough about the features. If you guys need something, if you're on an agency or a team that really has use for aiming lasers with programmability, whatever that may mean to you, this is probably what you've been looking for if you haven't already found it. Just reading through the owner's manual, there is a ton of stuff packed in here. It's got a mission log function. So you can actually scroll back in the menu and you can track how many times you activated that button during your mission, whether that's for an after action report or some kind of team audit of an exercise or whatever have you. There's a bunch of stuff in here. For a lot of us, for most of us even, we won't use that, but it's nice that it has it. The controls, everything's very tactile, very easy to use. And I like that they raise some of these buttons and stuff so you can, under nods or with the gloved hand even, feel where you're at. The fire button's kind of like a nipple, which is, for some of you guys, probably very exciting. But you can tell which control is which. You're not going to get lost feeling around for it, which honestly, if you're training, you shouldn't have that problem in the first place, right? But yeah, fantastic laser. Looking forward to getting time behind, this unit and seeing what does it look like, what does it function like compared to some of the other options on the market. So when we do put this at a Raid XE side by side with this D-Ball A3, just a straight up comparison, because I think a lot of times as civilians, and we're balling on a budget, I'm not hating on it, we look at it and say this is good enough. And then in reality, we really do want the performance out of something like this. Now I get it. This is a little bit less than half the price of this. It's a lot, but it depends on how badly you want or need the performance. I am a big proponent of the Steiner D-Ball A3, mostly because I am an opponent of Chinesium. I don't really like telling people, go buy the Hollow Sun laser. It's fantastic. And it does function pretty well. From what I've seen and heard, the Iris is an outstanding laser. Would I rather see somebody spend $300-400 more and get a D-Ball A3 or a used D-Ball I Square or something like that? Yes, I would rather see them get this, even if the performance is going to be, not as great as some of the modern lasers out there. But I think comparing these two, it kind of shows you that dichotomy in what's available in the civilian market between what was our standard and then fast forward to today, what is our standard. So I think this does hold its own in the conversation with what we as civilians have access to today. I think certainly it would have to be the Raid XE and the B.E. Myers Mall. Are kind of up there in that S-tier class of lasers for performance. When you want S-tier performance, you pay S-tier prices. It sucks. It's unfortunate. I don't love that. I wish it was more accessible. But the nice thing to see is that with this technology becoming more available, the price is coming down. We are seeing units like, yes, the Hollow Sun Iris come out with V-cell illuminators. And there's smaller companies hitting the market too that are utilizing that V-cell technology. Units like the Penumbra. For my friends over at AMMJ Detroit, great laser. Go check that one out if you're looking for alternative options on the market. The 3 electron infrared, good laser. Not a big fan of the windage and elevation adjustments on that, but it's very low profile. If that's something you need for an LPVO, cool. Nice to see those companies popping up and doing their thing, taking a different spin on it. If you just need a laser module that's going to go on when you press the button. But this, certainly with the programmability, with the controls, with how well thought out it is, that robust, rugged construction, I think stands in a class all its own. So more to come on this, you guys. I'm really, really excited to get testing in with this, to get time in with it and train with it on my own. Understand the new capabilities and new limitation set that this brings to my shooting and my training ability. So hope this has been helpful for you guys. I know, again, a lot of this, it's cost prohibitive, but save for these kinds of things, save for these kinds of enhancements. I feel like I talk to people all the time say, I will never be able to afford that. I even had people tell me if I ever got a laser like that, so if they were ever given one or they want it in a raffle or something, and that, in this conversation, they were specifically referencing a mall, they would just sell it because that's way more than they need. It's way nicer than they need. They'd be afraid to break it. Like these units aren't, developed and tested for rugged durability for military and law enforcement contracts. Now, probably can't hit it with a hammer or anything like that, but they're going to be durable. They're going to perform well for you, and you should want the best tools you can get. Obviously, there's certain levels to that with your budget and the restrictions you have for yourself. I'm not saying you have to go load up your charge card, for $3,000 to go get a Mall Raid XE to have a effective aiming solution. Before you guys jump in the comment section, that's not what I'm saying, but I am saying if you want that higher end performance, maybe look into buying a secondhand or gently used unit or an agency trade-in of a civilian powered unit. The problem I have, and if you want to get a full power PEC 15 or an NGOL or something like that on the gray market and you don't know where the hell or who the hell it came from, that's your business. But the problem I have with that stuff is, there's warranties tied to all these things. And if that laser goes down, as you as the user have a failure with that particular tool, and you send it into whatever company is the manufacturer, whether that's L3 or EOTech or BE Myers, or if it's a full power unit that you're not supposed to have, they're not going to send it back to you. It stinks. I think it's unfair, but those are the rules, and that's just the reality we have to be faced with. So while a lot of guys say, go buy a used full power unit rather than a new civilian power unit, I think you're paying roughly within the same conversation, the same money. I've seen some of these PEC units that are used go for $2,000 to $2,500. And there are some issues with the PEC. I'm not a huge fan of it personally. It is a good laser, no doubts there. But we've had advancements in the mounting solution, in the body, the materials that they're made out of, the functionality that the units can bring to the table now. So if you're gonna spend $2,500 on a used PEC 15, my question would be, are you sure you don't want to spend something like $2,900 or $3,000 on a new Raid XE, or at least a used Raid, something like that? There's options. And as always, we have more options that are higher performing tools and solutions for us, right? Then, rising tide raises all ships, all that kind of thing. So it's an exciting time to be using lasers and to be in the market for a laser, because there's so many companies out there trying to do it better than the next guy at price points as low as $250 up to upwards of $4,000, even $5,000 for some of these. Really, really cool stuff, and I urge you guys to do all of your own research and look into it. But certainly appreciate you guys checking out this video. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Again, we're moving like crazy the last 28 days or 30 days, whatever metric that YouTube gives me. It's really exciting for me to see the growth and to see you guys enjoying the content. If you have thoughts, if you have questions, as always, drop them in the comment section. Make sure you guys hit that notification bell. We are trying to drop content every week, every other week as we're able, shorts and things like that. Our YouTube, the podcast, it's a lot, but trying to drop that stuff on a regular basis. We appreciate all the support. Hope you guys got a lot out of this. And as always, I will catch you on the next one.